Hi, on today's video we're going to go back to GMIS Bali, but before I talk about my role as general manager, I'd just like to talk today about the hierarchy of the school and why we have international schools, or schools for that matter. Schools historically were a place of education, and generally only for males, not females. Females didn't come into the picture till about 60, 70 years ago. And generally they focused on math, science and English. There were no business studies in those days. Anyway, we'll move on. So in the 70s and 80s, of course, we had an organisation called the IB, International Baccalaureate, which the baccalaureate has its roots within the UN. And its sole purpose was for teaching a curriculum, a recognised curriculum throughout the world for international schools. And at which time, in the 70s, 80s, there might have been a maximum of 100 or 200. Compare that to today, where we have 5, 10, maybe 15,000 international schools for foreign students living abroad, and the IB has that market. GMIS began approximately in the 50s and was taken over in the 70s, 80s by Sindhi businessmen. Now, the Sindhi community in Jakarta is a very interesting community. Sindh is a province of Pakistan, and a lot of the Pakistanis, the Sindhis, came to Indonesia pre-partition and post-partition during India-Pakistan. So what happened was the Sindhs are very much business people. They have their money in textiles, they have their money in movies, and of course they have their money in schools, they have their money in restaurants. And one thing about the Sindhis that I've noticed, especially here, but it might apply in the UK, is a lot of them use Indian people, names, within the company. So for example, the restaurant might be named the Bombay Palace, even though it's owned by Pakistanis. Our school was Gandhi, okay, even though Gandhi was an Indian. The bottom line is that they're very good businessmen, but they don't necessarily know how to run a school. So they were at the top of the tree. The chairman, the board were all Sindhis. Sindhis, of course, are Indonesian. They have Indonesian passports. The school, Gandhi, was run generally by Indians. So the principal was Indian. The majority of supervisors were Indian. And this is where we come to the hierarchy. Hindu as a religion is very much caste orientated, not just in India, but also here in Bali. You know, everybody has their place, and it's very noticeable when you're working with a lot of Indians that there is a hierarchy, not just because of somebody's position, but because of who they are. And one thing that wasn't applicable to me or the Filipino or the Indonesian teachers, the Indian teachers had to toe the line. If you pissed the principal off and you were Indian, it was out on your ear. And this became much more obvious when I moved to Bali as general manager. Bali did not have the quality of teachers, especially Indian teachers, that Jakarta had. One reason was Jakarta was paid more. But neither here nor there. There were at least 10% who I would say were very good teachers when I arrived in Bali. Within a year, they'd all gone. Why? Because they upset the principal. The principal of Bali wouldn't take any bullshit. Oh, didn't matter. You might be the best teacher in the world. Didn't matter. You asked for a pay rise and she wasn't going to give you, get out. Or you confronted her about something, get out. So, of course, the quality of education fell. ironically, the Indonesian teachers were often better than the Western, because in Bali we had quite a few Western teachers and the Indian teachers. However, guess what? They were paid about a fifth of the wage these so-called experts were paid. And it upset me because, especially the supervisors in Bali specifically, frankly, they were bloody horrible to the Indonesians. These are Indian citizens being horrible to Indonesian citizens in Indonesia. They were a couple, an Indian couple, and they were just below the principal. Oh my God, again, you upset them. Oh, didn't matter how good you were at your job. Their word was strong, God. And it's a shame GMIS played this game, but I guess that's the way it is. That's how a hierarchy works. But for me, when I dealt with my staff, I wasn't interested except the work. How good were they at the work? Whether they were a driver, whether they were in admin. It didn't matter. If they did the work well, I'm happy. And I'd hopefully promote them or give them more things, more experience. But no, not the Indians. The Indians generally kept everything to themselves. So the principal would have all this. He had a vice principal in Jakarta, but not used, not delegate, because they wanted all the power. Same in Bali. The principal, she wouldn't give any delegation on the whole. Oh, no. And of course, this is where one of my problems came. We didn't have a negative relationship. I'd known Miss Jabba from Jakarta. But the bottom line was there was always something there. Oh, I'm more powerful than you. Wow, big deal. And I almost forgot. Bah, don't be a sheep.